You're in the trenches with Dave Lapham, brought to you by First Star Logistics, and we're going to talk about keys or musts for the first preseason game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and we're going to give you game previews all season long for the rest of the preseason and all through the regular season, hopefully all the way to the Super Bowl. Wouldn't that be nice to talk about keys, musts, pregame reports for the Super Bowl? That would be great. But let's talk about, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's talk about first things first. And that's playing down in Tampa Bay against the defending Super Bowl champion, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. What has to take place, or what would you like to see take place? And particularly if you're on the Bengals coaching staff, what would you like to see take place? Well, first and foremost, avoid injuries. I mean, boy, you just hate to have a devastating injury any stage of the preseason, be it practice or any preseason game. And there are some injuries you can sustain, but you don't want to have a serious injury to a key player that will keep that player out for the season or for any extended time frame, a good portion of the season. You just want to avoid those as much as possible. So that's always going to be the biggest thing, is knock on wood and, cross your fingers and say your prayers, and the injuries are going to be avoided. The other thing I talk about a lot, but it is key in the early stages of preseason, pad level. Every single position has to deal with getting your pad level right. Offensive line, we talked about bending at the knees, not at the waist. Get yourself in a football position. You're going to get underneath shoulder pads. Low man wins. Football physics, low man wins in the game of football. You want to create that leverage. Get that pad level down. Pad level is important for a defensive lineman as well. You want to make sure that you're underneath the shoulder pads of the offensive lineman when you're trying to two-gap and stuff the run. And when you're pass rushing, you certainly don't want to stand up and expose your chest and allow the offensive lineman to strike you right in the middle of your chest with both of his hands and just stagnate your forward progress. So you want to always do something with the proper body lean if you're a defensive player. You want to be in the proper football position if you're an offensive player, and it's all about pad level, and it goes for linebackers, goes for defensive backs. I mean, everybody has to take on blockers. They have to separate. They have to tackle. And if your pad level's high, you have a much bigger percentage, much more of an opportunity to miss tackles, to get blocked instead of defeat blocks. Pad level is what it's all about. And in the early stages of training camp and in the early stages of preseason, guys struggle with that, having that proper pad level. Limit mistakes, and this is physical as well as mental. No blown assignments. You don't want any free runners if you're an offensive lineman or a running back and blitz pickup. Free runners in your quarterback where he's going to get hit unnecessarily. You don't want to go the wrong way on blitz pickup. You just want to make sure your assignment's sound, know what you're supposed to do, and know how you're supposed to do it. So you have to be able to be sound in these areas mentally and physically. No center quarterback exchange issues. Ball security is a big deal. High and tight if you're a running back or a wide receiver with the football and you're running with the football after a catch, or you're a running back hitting it up into the line of scrimmage. Make sure that you have that ball secured. No drops if you're a receiver. At the running back position, tight end position, or wide receiver position, no pre-snap penalties. These mental errors are killer, where you have false starts, you line up in an illegal formation, you don't have 7 people on the line of scrimmage, and maybe there's an illegal shift, neutral zone infraction. All of these kind of things are something that you don't want to see a big number of, even if it's the early stages of the preseason. If you see a lot of mental errors like this, it just means that you're not into the spirit of what's going on out there. And so it's hard enough to play football. It's a physical game. It's a challenge physically. If you get defeated physically, that happens. I mean, sometimes, they get paid too. Guys are good athletes, good players. You're going to lose some of the battles. But if you beat yourself on pre-snap penalties or other things that we've talked about here because your head wasn't into it in the proper fashion, now you're not doing yourself any kind of justice or service whatsoever. You don't want to see in the secondary any jailbreak blown coverages. You don't want to see receivers running down the football field wide open. Communication is going to be such a big thing in this football game. Recognition of formations, recognition of what they're doing from a motion standpoint, changing the strength of formations and how that changes your assignment, and then communicating it on defense. You recognize it and you communicate it so everybody's on the same page. You want to be have smooth communication from coach to coach. That's going to be big as well. It's the first time that they're going to be up in the booth, down on the sideline, smooth communication, coach to coach, coach to player, and player to player. The lines of communication in all three levels need to be wide open and operating very, very efficiently and passing along accurate information. There's no game planning for this football game, for this tilt as such. So you want to start the evaluation process of players executing the basics to get a good look at plays that will be key in establishing your identity on both sides of the football. You want to start to say, all right, we're going to be a good outside zone, a stretch run team. You're going to be able to have to execute it against all different kinds of looks, all different kinds of personnels that they may throw out there against you, and just get the basics down. Block and tackle. As Paul Brown famously said, and I think I've said this before, you get up in front of us and said, look, we can't trick them every snap. At some point, we have to block and tackle and play football. So these are things that you want to try to see in the first preseason game. You'd like to see a good, solid, sound effort, mentally, physically. Don't beat yourself. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who are defending Super Bowl champions and have a hell of a culture that they've built down there, they're good enough to beat you. Don't put yourself on your schedule and lose a football game because of self-inflicted issues that you don't need to have happen and you don't want to have happen, and hopefully you can prevent a lot of those from taking place. You're not going to go down there and play the perfect game, without any kind of mistakes whatsoever against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but you want to try to limit them as much as you possibly can, even if it's preseason game number 1.
Hi, Dave Lapham here. Have you heard about In the Trenches with Dave Lapham, presented by First Star Logistics? Catch new episodes from the world of sports and broadcasting. Search for In the Trenches with Dave Lapham on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.